Okay, hi everyone. My name is Andrea Patton, and I'm the Chief of Staff for the City of Boston's Disabilities Commission. I want to welcome you to our Disability Community Forum. We're going to start with a few access notes to get started, and then we'll kick it into the meat of why we're here. Colleen, I know you have a few announcements for access.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome to the Disability Community Forum. This event is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube. Closed captioning is available on Zoom and in the room. If you want to access closed captioning, please click the CC button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. ASL interpretation is also available. If you would like to have the ability to multi-pin the interpreters, please chat disability staff such as myself for any assistance. Simultaneous interpretation in Spanish is also available by clicking the globe on the Zoom screen, and I'm going to invite the Spanish interpreter to give those instructions now.
Hi, my name is Emily Getchell, and I will be your Spanish interpreter today. Buenos días y bienvenidos a todos. Mi nombre es Emily, voy a servir de intérprete para este foro. En un momentico vamos a encender la función de interpretación, entonces ubícase a la parte inferior de su pantalla de Zoom y ahí selecciona el globo. Haciendo clic ahí, escoge español para escuchar el foro en español. Si se está conectando con móvil, empuje los 3 puntitos, de ahí escoge Interpretation, pues Spanish o español, pues Done o listo. Si tiene cualquier dificultad, por favor, comunícase con nosotros en el chat. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. And one more housekeeping rule. Please refrain from interrupting interpreters and allow time for them to finish translating before speaking. There will be time for participants on Zoom to ask questions. Please use the Zoom raise hand function to indicate you would like to speak. And please keep questions and comments to under 1 minute and mute yourself when you are not speaking. Finally, please identify yourself before speaking to increase accessibility. I'm going to kick it off to Andrea.
Thank you. If you are in the room and you would like to make a comment or question, please sign up at the back or grab myself in the blue polo, and we will switch between in-person and Zoom questions. There are mics around the room. They will need to be turned on when you're ready to use them. They're off right now, so I can assist with that if you need to turn it on to make your questions. We are going to try and take as many questions as we can today. If we have an answer, we'll give it to you. We may not have all the answers today, though. And so if we don't, we are taking notes. We will get back to you with answers, especially if you registered. We will email you the Q&A summary that we will put together. So we want to listen as much as we talk today. And that's why we also ask that you keep your comments as short as possible so we can hear from as many of you as possible. And I will kick it now to Commissioner Kristen Mccosh.
Thank you, Andrea. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Disability Community Forum. This is one of our favorite annual events because we get to hear directly from the people who we serve as City of Boston employees. I'd like to kick off the event by introducing my board, and I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves by name, tell us what neighborhood they live in, and tell us one of their big priorities that they like to work on in their work as an advisory board member. Wes?
Good afternoon. My name is Wes, and I'm signing, and I'm using American Sign Language. You have a female voice right now. I live in the North End, and the biggest priority that I was able to achieve last year when I pushed to have captioning for all of the public-facing TV, and I look forward to more success in other issues dealing with communication. Oh, one more thing. I'm the board chair. Next.
So, can you hear me okay? My name is Richard Glovsky. I live in Back Bay, and my priority being on the commission is to do whatever I can to help those who have disabilities, whether they're physical or mental, to live the complete life that they want to live in this city. And anything that we can do in that regard, I'm sure everybody who's on the commission would be most interested in hearing from you if it's not something we're doing right now.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dusia Lebovskaya, and I am from Boston. I live in Mission Hill specifically. And my priority is the autism advocacy, specifically easier access for education and job opportunities. And I'm the vice chair. And in specifics to autism advocacy, it's a work in progress, but there has been some accomplishments, but it's one step at a time, but I'm staying optimistic. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Karen. I serve as the board secretary and as an advocate for mental illness, this being Mental Illness Awareness Month of May. My line is always open to whoever needs help with anything as an advocate. Can help put you in the right direction, hopefully with education, housing, medication. And if I can't help, then I gladly would try to get someone that will help. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carl Richardson. I identify as a deafblind individual. I live in Brighton. I am the treasurer, and I have two priorities, actually, that are very important to me. One is information access, whether that be cheap and affordable internet, because access to information is access to knowledge and access to power and equal access. So information access, and that could be cheap and affordable internet, Wi-Fi, captions, as Wes mentioned, on television, audio description, just access to accessible websites, just access to information in general, because without that, we can't be on equal footing in terms of transportation, medical, all those things. The other thing is physical access to public places. So that means, not just the public places themselves, but sidewalks, audible pedestrian signals, because, tactile warning strips, accessible ramp for those with who use wheelchairs and people like myself who don't want to trip over curbs. So it just, for those who can't drive, access to public transportation and work roads and sidewalks and traffic is also important. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jerry Boyd. I live in West Roxbury, and I'm a proud member of the advisory board and have been for 7 or so years. Priorities for me, I echo pretty much all that everyone else has stated on the board, and also in addition to me, transportation and access to public transportation is extremely important to me, as well as housing and access to housing, because without those two things, people with disabilities cannot be seen as full members of society. So we look forward to hearing from you today.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Dean-Clower. I live in Back Bay. I've served as an advisory board member for several years, and I have greatly enjoyed working with this group that, as you can see, represent a cross-section of different disabilities and lived experiences. I have my two particular areas of priority are accessible transportation and access for inclusion for people with disabilities, hidden or not hidden, in all walks of daily life, but particularly in medical settings, to make sure that people have access whether it's to their clinic, their hospital encounter. And so we welcome your presence both in the room and on Zoom, and thank you for coming.
Good afternoon. My name is Zaria Amir Hosseini, and I live in South Boston, South Southie. And I work at Mass General. I represent and advocate for patients with disabilities. And I guess my priority is to really add A to our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So instead of just saying DEI, we should say DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in healthcare. Because without it, we don't have our basic needs met, and we should actually make sure that our patients have full access to healthcare. Thank you for coming.
Excuse me. Good afternoon. My name is Charlie Kim. I live in the North End, and I represent parents with students, with children with disabilities. I guess my priority would be to continue to advocate and lift up the youngest of learners through young adults so that they can have equitable access to transition services, education, but mainly all city services that are provided to others.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thanks to all the board members. And for those of you who don't know, our advisory board holds monthly public meetings. We encourage you all to attend. They're held on Zoom. You can find more information at our website, boston.gov/disability. They do a wonderful job advocating for you. So I'd like to give them a round of applause. Thank you. And really briefly, my role in the city is the Disability Commissioner as well as the ADA Title II Coordinator. So we work on ensuring that everything overseen by the City of Boston is accessible and inclusive. This is everything from streets and sidewalks to programs and policies to meetings to public events. So we are here today really to listen to you. So in the interest of time, I would like to say that I couldn't get my work done without my incredible staff. So I'd just like to ask my staff all to raise their hands. And I will be calling on them to answer some questions that are appropriate. Yep, big round of applause. And then we also have a number of city staff here who've come to listen and learn from you, and I'd like to ask them to raise their hands. And I'm thrilled to see such a great turnout in person and on Zoom. So we did ask people to pre-submit a number of questions, and we're not going to go over all of those, but I do want to just mention two themes that we saw. The first one is housing. So our efforts towards housing are really systemic. We don't do placement in our office, but we work very closely with the Office of Housing Stability. That's a separate city department that helps people find housing. We also work with the Fair Housing Commission. They work on people who have housing discrimination issues. Then we also work on reviewing new building developments to make sure that they're accessible and inclusive. So if anyone has questions about any of these housing issues, we will refer you to those departments. But just know that we do work on housing. We just work on it in a systemic manner. The other theme that we heard a lot of in questions was the MBTA. So many people may not know that the city doesn't directly oversee the MBTA. It's under the state Mass Department of Transportation. We work very closely with Laura Brailsford, who's the head of system-wide access. I believe she's joining us on Zoom today. And if we have any MBTA questions, we will ask Laura to respond if she's able. So I just want to wrap up by saying we won't be able to answer all the questions today, but as Andrea said earlier, we will get back to people, and we're going to publish a question and answer guide after the event today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea to kick off the questions.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. And so we will be going back and forth between questions in the room and questions from Zoom. So I'll start with an in-room question, Don Summerfield. That microphone work for you, Don?
And while Dawn's getting set up, I will also note that Mayor Wu will be here at approximately 2:45.
My name is Don Summerfield, and I don't have a question, but I want a moment of silence for Elaine Hamilton, who's a fellow board member of the Boston Center for Independent Living, who fought for social justice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Don. And so we'll go next to Bill Henning.
Hi, thank you. I'm Bill Henning with Boston Center for Independent Living. I'll try to be really brief. You just mentioned you handle lots of, or had lots of inquiries on housing, and certainly we would say that's the biggest issue, I think, facing people in the city, or most disruptive. It's It's dangerous, of course, ranking things, because if you have housing and, say, have an issue with the T, which you mentioned, then that's the biggest issue. But I applaud you for working on things systemically, and I think I'll repeat what I said last year. It was a very deep and very, very well-stated phrase, so that's why I'll bring it up. We need units, 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 and units, 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 and units. We need more housing. It wasn't too profound, but it's very obvious, and we need to look at accessibility as well, expanding how we think of accessibility beyond just the vital physical access we know about, but also for things such as open shelving, lighting, acoustics, et cetera, for people with neurodiversities and other matters, and appreciate the collaboration with the Commission. Thank you.
I'll just give a brief response to that. The way we work systemically, we have three members of my staff are what we call our architectural access team. They are architects and engineers, and they review building plans for new large developments in Boston, and they look at things like a redundant elevator in case one elevator goes down. They make sure that doorways are wide enough, and then things like you mentioned too, Bill, lighting and other issues that we really need to pay attention to. We also have an internal working group called the Disability Housing Task Force that works on pushing the envelope. Once we get more units approved, what can we do to really make them not only meeting the bare minimum code, but to make them fully accessible and inclusive. And one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning is that we do produce an annual report, and that is here live. We have some printed up copies, and we'll drop the link in the Zoom chat. And this is just basically a summary of all the work we've done over the past year in my office, and also the work that the advisory board has done. Andrea?
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm not seeing any hands in our Zoom room or chats popping up on our screen, so I'll continue with our list of folks here in the room. So Patricia, you have a question you're reading out on behalf of one of our participants, right?
Yes. Thank you, Andrea. And this question is from Marilyn, and it's about the MBTA and the ride. The question is it true that the ride drivers and ride passengers do not have to wear masks?
Could I have the floor, please, for a moment? Yes, Elizabeth Dean-Clower. I'd like to acknowledge that Michelle Steeler and her staff are in the room. Michelle, if you could just, you and your staff could raise your hands. That they work actually separately. There's a Riders Transportation Access Group, RTAG, who works in an advisory and proactively working with her office. So her office is on those specific questions to do with that part of paratransit. Michelle is here in the room. I don't know for the purposes of today's format if she could answer that, or.
Yeah, we'd be happy to have Michelle. If I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you'd like to respond.
If there's a microphone near you.
Yes, that is true. We lifted it based on the lifting of the state of emergency, but we do continue to encourage both our employees and our customers to wear masks, and we've noted that on our website as well. And I suspect there may be more ride questions, and I would defer to the board here on how you'd like me to address them. We could take notes and attempt to address them at the end, but again, whatever your preference is.
Thank you so much, Michelle. We'll definitely take notes and follow up with anything that we don't have time for today. Commissioner, anything else? Oh, yeah.
Oh, and ironically, the word I was looking for was advocacy, that whether as board members or through our tag, it's advocacy on behalf of the disability community that is our goal. And hearing the updates and working with Michelle on the policies as they exist, and we'd like to see them change.
I don't want to hijack your meeting here, but I just want to say thank you. It's a pleasure to deal with our tag, and I think that we've made great strides in the just over a year that I've been here. Great approach collaboratively at addressing systemic issues, and I think things are only going to get better for those of you that have concerns, but we're moving in a great direction.
And I believe, Jerry, are you also an RTAG member?
Yes, yes, and work closely with Elizabeth and Michelle and her team on the RTAG. There's a subcommittee that deals specifically with the ride, and I'm happy to participate and sit on that, and a former chair of that committee. So happy to work with Michelle and her team. And again, echo what Michelle says. I think we do have a good collaborative relationship, although there's many miles to go to fix some of the issues, but we're determined to work together to hopefully come up with solutions.
Great, thank you. Still seeing this is Andrea of the commission. I've not been introducing myself. Seeing no hands raised in the Zoom, we'll continue with our in-person list. Jay Lappin, would you like to find a microphone, or I can bring one to you? There we go.
What's up, y'all? My name's Jay. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm here to celebrate a win and look for partnership with y'all. I'm a person who lives with a mental health disability. I'm also a social worker, and I work in peer support. I most recently work with NAMI, Massachusetts. I'm also a comedian and musician. And next March for Disability Awareness Month, I'm partnering with a comedy festival from Seattle to come to Boston and do the festival here. I'm really excited for it. I'm looking for partnership, for support. The venues that are interested so far are the House of Blues, Brighton Music Hall, and Paradise Rock Club. So it should be we're trying to make it like a big deal, and would love as much support as we can get. But yeah, I just want to share that win and see how we can work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for speaking up. That's really what this forum is about, is that we want to hear from the community. So all kinds of issues, and that's great to know your work with NAMI. My office also partners closely with disability nonprofits. We work very closely with Bill Henning at BCIL. We work with Partners for Youth with Disability. I see Mary Mahan here from the Mass Office on Disability. And Michelle, I'm sorry I didn't see you come in. But I know that there are a lot of people here today who we work closely with. And that's great to hear. Thank you for telling us about your event.
I see we have a question in the Zoom room.
Yeah, so I think, Colleen, you'll have to invite her to unmute.
Okay.
Or Kylie. One of you should be able to invite her to unmute.
Oh, yes. Melita, we are going to call on you next. Please unmute if you can. If you need help, I'm getting there. No, sorry. I'm sorry, we're getting to you. I don't see your name. Sorry, so sorry. Not sure why that's happening. Hold on. Let me try one more thing. Oh, now Melita, I think you can speak now. We don't hear you, Melita. Are you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please ask your question.
Okay. I live in Rosendale, and there's a big bike initiative that's going on along Poplar Street, and Poplar Street is one of the places near my house that I tend to walk or wheel down just to get from my house to the center of town or to get to a bus. And the street is the wheelchair cuts need repair, and because it makes it very difficult. If I'm on crutches, I'm going to flop on my face. And the what do you call it? The slabs on the sidewalk are not even. So one might be a little lower, and this one might be up right next to it. There are cracks and all sorts of things along the sidewalk. Now, the Poplar Street begins at Washington and Poplar, okay, which is the middle of Rosendale Square, and it goes all the way up and around. And I know that other people who use wheelchair all the time have problems. A lot of people have stopped coming into town because of these issues, or they're in the streets. They're in the streets. So I've gone to other parts of town, including Boylston Street, and the issues are very similar. And the cuts in the road are just, it's supposed to be wheelchair and disability accessible, but if some of them slide off, okay, and they're just not no one's being accountable for them, and I'd really like to see something change.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the question. We really appreciate it. So one thing I like to tell people, it's not an excuse, but just to keep in mind that Boston is a very unique city. We're an old city. We're a historical city. We're a very densely packed city. We're a vertical city, and we're a winter city. So we already have a bunch of baked-in challenges. With that being said, we also have political will to get things done right. We have laws and other building requirements that we have to adhere to. And we also have a really dedicated city staff who pay attention to these things. So with that, I would like to turn it over to our Director of Architectural Access, Patricia Mendez, and some of her staff also work very closely on streets and sidewalks. But Patricia, you can take it.
Yeah. Melita, thank you so much for your question. I know exactly where Poplar Street is, and I'm taking note of your report, and we'll take a look at the curb cuts and the sidewalk, and we'll communicate with Public Works to make sure that they know of the condition. So thank you very much for your questions, and we're taking notes.
And I will also add that oftentimes when we get a complaint about a sidewalk or a curb cut, we put the request in the system, but it doesn't always mean it's going to get fixed overnight, because the Public Works Department will have to make plans, they have to put the job out to bid. So sometimes it can be a year or two process, but that doesn't mean that we're not paying attention to it. So I would encourage people to call 311 or do the app so that they can report it, because then you get a ticket and you can check in on the system to see where it is in the system. And that's something that you can follow along. The Public Works Department will come out and make an area safe with an asphalt patch, if that's something that would be helpful. But reconstructing a whole sidewalk is a process that takes time. And I'd also like to note that our Senior Architectural Access Specialist, Sarah Leong, sits on the Public Improvement Commission, which is a city body that oversees all work done on public rights-of-way. So every sidewalk project in the city goes through Sarah's eyes, and people know to check with Sarah to make sure it's compliant. And she does a great job overseeing all this work. So I have a great architectural access team.
Okay, I see another hand in the Zoom. Colleen, are you able to pin Howard?
I'm going to ask Howard Trackman to unmute. Please ask your question, Howard, and keep it to 1 minute.
Sure. I'd just love to hear more about services for people with mental health and addictions challenges in the city of Boston. I put into the chat my website, an email and phone number. We operate 4 recovery centers in Boston that are all free, open to anybody. And we have a peer support line people can call. And we really help people look for work and employment and build hope and community. What other resources is the city of Boston doing to serve people with mental health issues?
Andrea, do you want to talk about the Boston Public Health Commission's new director?
Yeah, let me put this down. This is Andrea with the Disabilities Commission. So the Boston Public Health Commission, about a year ago now, hired a new director of behavioral health, an MD from one of the local hospitals, and apologies, I don't remember which one, from Children's, thank you, Patricia, to lead a new dedicated Bureau of Behavioral Health initiatives. So a lot of the work that the city does come through the Health Commission, or BPHC.
Yeah, and on that note, I'll also mention that May is Mental Health Month. And as Paul Karen mentioned, he is really our strong advocate on the board for mental health issues. So we don't really do any direct services for mental health in our office, but my constituent services specialist is a licensed social worker, a master's level social worker, and he's the person who handles our constituent inquiries. And he also sits on a committee with the Boston Police Department, which is the co-responder committee. This program embeds a mental health clinician with the police when they respond to mental health calls. So Chris sits on this committee and gets all the information about what the latest programs are with the police, because we know that there are interactions between the police and people with disabilities that really could use help from a clinician. We also partner with nonprofits in this world, but because we have such a small staff, we don't work directly on mental health issues. We more try to get people a good connection and stay up to date on what's happening with different programs in the city that do work on it, like the Boston Public Health Commission, the co-responder unit at the police department, and any other departments that work on these issues.
Great. This is Andrea again. We have one final pre-signed up question asker, Lynn. Lynn Dan, would you like to come grab a mic, or I can bring one to you?
Okay. I actually don't have a question either. I'm here representing the commission, I'm sorry, I want to make sure, the Center for Working Families, which is a new division within the city of Boston. And my role, I'm the disability ambassador and the outreach to the disability world for the taxes and the different circumstances. I've got a lot of material. I won't waste your time, but just wanted to say hi, and I'm here.
Thank you. So I know the mayor will be here in just a few more minutes, but if we have no other questions, no questions right now, Andrea? Okay. I would like to ask An Lee would you stand up and introduce yourself? An is part of our equity cabinet. I don't know, I didn't mention this at the time, but our office falls under the Department of Equity and Inclusion. It's a new role for us. We were previously in the Human Services Cabinet, but as Zari mentioned at the beginning, the city and Mayor Wu really elevates disability to a piece of equity and inclusion. So we work closely with An, who works on policy. So just, could you talk a little bit about E&I?
Is Chief coming? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Anlay. I'm the Director of Policy and Research for the Equity and Inclusion Cabinet. Our team, we have a core team of around 10 people who support the work of our 8 departments, which includes the Commission on Persons with Disabilities and 7 other departments. Our team also covers a few topic areas, racial justice citywide, supporting Indigenous Communities Fellowship, and economic mobility, which we're sort of bringing back as a sort of focused city function for communities that have been historically excluded. And so that's sort of the framing that we want to lead with and go with, in that it's not that members of these communities, members of our communities have excluded themselves, but that they have been excluded. by the structures that we've put into place. And so we're working to try to embed equity and inclusion in all of the services and programs and policies the city has. And so we just love being there together with leaders like Commissioner Mccosh and her team, as well as our other 7 teams, to sort of work at these intersections and advise all of our sister city departments to improve their work so that it's more equitable and inclusive.
Thank you, An. And just to let everybody know, we are posting a position for a training specialist. So if anyone's interested in applying, this person will help to develop trainings about disability, not only interacting with people with disabilities, but different topics. Like we have a meeting and accessibilities checklist to ensure that all meetings the city does are accessible, and outreach engagement to ensure that we're paying attention to communication. And so look for that position if you're interested. And can I call on another staff person to introduce themselves? John Romano, I'm looking at you.
Hi all, my name is John Romano. I'm the Chief of Staff of the Community Engagement Cabinet. In our cabinet, we cover the Office of Neighborhood Services, the 311 Department, Civic Organizing Department, and then Spark Boston, which is our young adult council. Kind of, is the next version up of the Mayor's Youth Council. So happy to be here with you all. I've seen some of your faces before and glad to be a resource.
Thank you, John. And while we wait for the mayor, do we have any other questions?
I was going to ask the Office of Fair Housing if they're willing to introduce themselves, because I know we get a lot of calls about housing issues, and folks may not know that housing discrimination is not covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's a different law, and that's why we have a different office. We've got 2 excellent colleagues here today, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves.
Hi, everybody. I'm not used to using one of these. My name is Maggie Callahan. I am one of our senior investigators with the Office of Fair Housing and Equity. We work a lot together. We also sit right next to each other, which is really useful when we have housing complaints regarding disability, access, modifications, reasonable accommodations. And so we are a resource if you believe that you are being discriminated against, whether that is during the application, finding housing, or that's while you are a tenant or you're buying or you have already bought a home. So please feel free to reach out to us. I have cards if you can stop by afterwards with my phone number and email. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I also forgot to mention that some of our board members may be attending on Zoom. Colleen, did you say anyone on Zoom who's a board member?
I did not see any board members on Zoom, but if I missed you, please raise your hand.
Great, thank you. And while we do have another minute or 2 before Mayor Wu arrives, I'd like to turn to my advisory board and see if anyone wants to talk about any initiatives that we've worked on that they feel are important, or anything that they're looking forward to. If you want to talk in more detail about anything, please do so. This meeting is really to introduce you to the community.
None of you want to talk about any of your work? You all do such great work.
Well, I will just mention one thing briefly. Because of this is Carl Richardson, because of the success of this commission and the mayor's office on persons with disabilities and the help of the city councilors passing the caption and ordinance for the city of Boston, the legislature at the State House did look at that and has introduced 2 bills, one in the Senate, one in the House, recommending to do something similar statewide, saying all places of a public accommodation will have to display captions when requested to do so. So hopefully Boston's initiative will be, ordinance will become a template statewide, and that's good. Today at the State House, there's a wheelchair warranty bill being heard for those to get wheelchairs fixed and maintained in a more timely manner. And there's a lot of things, and this city does work very closely with the state on a lot of initiatives and things. And I also had the honor of visiting the new memorial in the Martin Luther King Memorial, and I know they did some access features there, so that was nice to be able to take a part of that, be a part of that as a citizen of the city of Boston.
Thank you, Carl. I think we have a couple of questions on Zoom. We can take another one.
Sure. I am going to ask John Kelly to unmute. Please ask your question in 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a big supporter of the board. I'm a former member. Now I am director of Second Thoughts Massachusetts, Disability Rights Advocates Against Assisted Suicide. And I hope that the board will continue to oppose assisted suicide laws like the bills before the legislature, and also to let the community know that United Spinal and Not Dead Yet has filed a federal lawsuit in California calling for the law to be invalidated because it discriminates against disabled people, because it doesn't give us the same suicide protection as non-disabled people, and that assisted suicide is a form of deadly discrimination against disabled people. So thank you.
Thank you, John. And John is being extremely modest. John is one of the strongest disability advocates in Boston. He actually he reinstated the Disability Commission Advisory Board back in 2009. He was our board chair for several years. He does incredible work. He used to have a neighborhood advocacy group. I can't think of the name of it now, but I know you did a lot of work on streets and sidewalks. He's personally responsible for a lot of the big projects that you've seen in Boston, including the accessible path on City Hall Plaza, which we were able to have Mayor Menino give the okay on. It was a really big deal because City Hall Plaza is historic, and with all the bricks on it, it was traditionally very inaccessible. So John, through his advocacy work, was able to work with the city to get an accessible path of travel in asphalt put on the plaza over 10 years ago. And following that, the success of that, we just had the whole renovation of City Hall Plaza to match the accessible path. So thank you, John, for those comments. And I know the board has supported this initiative in the past and will consider in the future what they want to do about it. But thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. And then one other note about access in City Hall. We are right now in the process of installing a vertical lift on the mezzanine. If you can picture City Hall when you enter on the 3rd floor, there is an area right in front of you that is a tall area of brick steps that lead to a little area where people have press conferences. There are tables where you can eat. We have events there. And the only way to access it now is with an inclined stair lift, which someone in a wheelchair can roll onto the lift, and the lift goes up the stairs vertically. I'm sorry, it goes along the stair rail. But we got a grant from the Mass Office on Disability, thank you, Mary, to install a vertical lift, which is much more dignified and much more accessible. So we are currently under construction right now, and it will be finished at the end of May, so we'll have a big celebration. We'll invite MOD to come and see the finished product, but it's another level of access to City Hall, which was really needed and which we've been working on for years and is finally coming to fruition. So excited about that.
We have another question on Zoom. Jake, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Sure, thank you for having me here. Not really a question, my name is Jake Handel. I developed the Ahoy app. I'm the founder. Basically, this is a Waze type app for rolling directions and finding spaces that with granular detail that are accessible for people's actual needs. And yeah, looking forward to getting more involved with this commission and forum and potential partnerships. Just wanted to introduce myself.
Thank you very much, Jake. It's a pleasure to meet you. And with that, I will turn the microphone over to Mayor Wu, who's just coming in. Come on in, Mayor. Is the podium mic working? Okay.
Yeah, whatever you prefer.
Please. Yeah.
Is it afternoon? Oh, it's already way afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It's been a busy time in Boston, and I hope everyone is getting some chance to enjoy the gorgeous weather outside. I think it always brings a smile to everyone's face when we finally arrive at this point in the calendar year when it warms up. Thank you so much to Commissioner Kosh and her entire team, to everyone who is on the commission leading the charge in Boston to ensure that we can be a city for everyone in every sense of that word. I'm excited to see so many friends here and to see advocates and community leaders who really embody our commitment to ensuring that we are a leading city when it comes to full accessibility and opportunity for each community. I remember last year, it doesn't seem like that long ago that we were just here, and getting a chance to meet so many then, and hello, oh, and now I'm seeing hello and welcome to our Zoom participants as well. So many who are joining in multiple ways. I'm going to try to keep my remarks short. I actually really don't like giving speeches. I much prefer to listen and hear what is on everyone's minds, and to be here in community and see what we should be working on in City Hall even more. I will just wanted to reflect a little bit on a really great visit that I was able to have last week with the commissioner and her team at the Boston Center for Independent Living, where we talked about a number of important items, whether it was increasing our supply of accessible, affordable housing for everyone. On that front, we are using every resource and every tool at the city available to fund, identify, create, and preserve affordable housing and home ownership. We know that transportation has been a big issue, and we, even just in observing a small stretch of the roadway in the downtown area on Temple Street, seeing the challenges of different property owners and the bumpiness of the sidewalk, the barriers that it creates when city infrastructure can be complicated by the layers of history that our city has, and the many different carve-outs in that legal system that happened long before the ADA. We are now working to go above and beyond and ensure that we can provide the partnerships and coordination so that no matter what part of the city, no matter who the property owners are, we can ensure accessibility for all. And I want to thank the Disabilities Commission for their collaboration with our Streets Cabinet on the Boston Breaks project to create opportunities for the cycling community to better understand the disability community's needs as we continue to work on all of our sidewalks and intersections to be safe for all. I also wanted just to highlight the work of the Commission on partnerships for the next generation. There's a financial empowerment program that I've been so excited about with the Boston Public Schools Special Education Leadership and Department as students are reaching that age of transition. There's been a partnership for sports and with the Special Olympics to ensure that everybody can participate in our youth sports programs. Construction on the Carter School has begun that will increase the number of classrooms and add an outdoor rooftop classroom, establish an early childhood and pre-K pathway, and create a sensory garden, a therapeutic pool accessible to all students, and a variety of indoor spaces that will advance development. And finally, I know the economy is on everyone's minds as we are seeing very difficult situations with inflation and the prices at the grocery store going up and continued impacts from the pandemic. And so I want to thank the team for working to create accessibility toolkits to help small business owners ensure that their businesses are accessible to all customers, and that the job opportunities that we're creating across the city also have pipelines and workforce development pathways for the disability community. There is no way to tackle any of our important challenges in isolation. We know that disability equity is connected to and integrated with our work on transportation, on climate, on housing, on racial justice, on the economy and jobs. And creating a more just city for all of us is really about creating a city that works for all of us. So I want to thank everyone for your leadership here, especially to the commissioner and everyone from our Disability Commission for all the work you do year-round to advocate, protect, and improve access across our departments and our neighborhoods. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Mayor Wu. Are you able to take a question or two? Okay. Does anyone have a question for the mayor?
Zoom included, I see at least one hand in the Zoom room.
Yes. Let me ask Caitlin to unmute.
Okay, I did not time it this way on purpose. Hi, my name is Caitlin. I am the admin assistant for Disability Law Center, and I live in Mattapan in Olmsted Green. And I have noticed the tactile strips are disintegrating or completely missing from sidewalks that are maybe 10 years old. I would like to know how to best report that so it doesn't get lost in a void. And I'm concerned about private right-of-ways interfering with the city's ability to fix something like this.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. Can you hear my answer? I want to make sure we're getting all the muting. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So I will say, overall, any issues related to accessibility, especially on our roadways and sidewalks, you can submit through 311, and that will get right into the constituent services queue. I want to make sure to note, though, that I know the commissioner and her team are also always there as a resource, as are our neighborhood liaisons. And so this particular, I'll make sure we get out to Olmsted Green and take a look there so we can identify the specific intersections that you're talking about. If I remember correctly, and sometimes a lot of information passes in front of me, and Commissioner and others in the room, let me know if I have this wrong. But if I remember correctly, there had been talk about the city recognizing how quickly some of our accessibility infrastructure was wearing away and shifting towards more durable materials in situations exactly like this. And so I don't want to, is that right, Commissioner?
I'm so impressed, Mayor, that you remember that with all the information you have to retain.
Was it that we were moving towards more metal?
Yep, they're going to be cast iron now. Moving forward, the Public Works Department will be using cast iron tactile warnings.
Is that everywhere or just in certain locations?
That's everywhere on sidewalks that the city owns. As we mentioned earlier, jurisdiction is always an issue. There are private ways. There are sidewalks owned by MassDOT and Massport and the MBTA. So we will certainly partner with our fellow agencies to talk about cast iron, but the city-owned sidewalks will all be using cast iron.
Great. So I guess what I'm saying, Caitlin, is there are multiple avenues to report issues. I don't want you to feel like the burden is on our residents, that you have to only use 311, because sometimes it can feel like you're not sure if it gets into the queue, how long it might take, and who's actually seeing it. I will guarantee everything that gets into 311 is processed and reviewed in the most efficient way by our public works teams and streets teams. Some things, sometimes I've reported potholes or seen other people report potholes, and they'll be out in 10 minutes if they happen to be in the area. Some of these changes that might require a little bit more planning and ordering materials or getting the design right will be a little bit longer. And So you can always, if there's some more of a systemic issue in that way, flagging it for either the neighborhood liaison or disability commission can help make sure someone is also monitoring this as an issue that might affect other areas besides just what you're pointing out in one part of the city. As you hear here, this is a systemic issue that the team is already on top of and looking to change citywide, but it's really helpful to get the individual flags because then we can start to see when patterns like this emerge and we may need to make a larger change.
Thank you, Mayor Wu. This is Andrea. I believe Mike Sinclair may have also dropped a link in the chat on Zoom to our curb ramp specific form, which goes to curbramps@boston.gov. So if it's a curb ramp specific issue, we have our own form. And I see another question in the chat. Colleen, are you able to ask Giuseppe to unmute?
Yes. Giuseppe, please ask your question.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. I'm sorry, I joined the meeting late. I have ALS, and I make frequent trips to MGH taking the T, and I apologize if this was discussed earlier. But my concern is about the escalators that are really chronically not working on the T. To be specific, in the Blue Line at Bolton, the escalator has really been disabled for a long time. I inquire to the MBTA, but no one really responds. And I know we have a lot of issues with the T, and I just want to know if there is any pressure that someone can put on this so it can get addressed.
Giuseppe, could you say one more time which station on the Blue Line you're mentioning?
It's the Bolton station.
Okay,
the last station.
Bowdoin.
And that's really the only two ways to get to Mass General, either by the Red Line or by the Blue Line. But if the escalator is chronically not working, then either we should maybe shut the station down, or we should address it. But it appears to me that there is no plan in action to address this. So I was wondering if someone can do anything about it.
Great. Okay. So I will make sure. Does anyone from our transportation department happen to be here at the moment? Okay. Well,
we do have Laura Brailsford of the Office of System-Wide Accessibility at the T on the Zoom, if you'd like to kick to her or the rest.
Wonderful. I was going to say, we will make sure we follow up with the T. Laura, is there anything you would, that would be helpful to know?
Sorry, Laura, you should be able to unmute now.
Look, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right, great. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Laura Brailsford. I serve as the Assistant General Manager for System-Wide Accessibility at the T. And I can provide some background on the escalator at Bowdoin Station. So we are dealing with an extremely unique situation at this particular station. This escalator several months ago was flagged as having deteriorated so much that it was no longer safe for use. So the MBTA decided to take it out of service. The project team immediately began looking at what could be done to restore it to service. And what they found out was that the underbelly of the escalator had rusted so significantly. The only solution is to completely rebuild the escalator. The original escalator was so old that a new escalator, which will need to meet modern escalator standards, is significantly longer in shape and size, meaning this will actually drive wholesale changes to the design of the station. So we have a team looking at that set of design opportunities now, but it certainly means that escalator is going to be out of service for a significant period of time. It's a unique situation at Bowdoin in that Bowdoin is our only subway station that has an escalator without an elevator. So individuals who have been really benefiting from that escalator, relying on that escalator, really do not have any backups at the location. That having been said, Government Center Station, which was recently renovated, is a quarter of a mile down the road with a very good accessible path of travel connecting the stations. So much so that when we looked at the feasibility of establishing a shuttle to mitigate the escalator outage, it really was not much different of a path than using Government Center Station. So although this is certainly not the experience we want our riders to be encountering at Bowdoin, we do have a decent alternative at Government Center, or for those traveling to MGH, as you mentioned, the Charles MGH station. So I will absolutely keep this group updated on the status of the commission, updated on the status of the escalator at Bowdoin, but that is what we know as of right now.
Thank you, Laura.
We work very closely with Laura and her team. In fact, my architectural access staff was on a site visit this morning, looking at several stops. Do you want to mention any of that, Patricia?
Thank you, Commissioner. This is Patricia Mendez. Yeah, we were with the MBTA team this morning, the Green Line transformation on the Green Line this morning. Looking at, really challenging crossings near Chiswick Road.
Great. And like Laura mentioned, some of these fixes aren't short-term. We know that the escalators in City Hall are actually out of service right now as well.
That's what I was thinking about.
I know, exactly. Mayor, did you want to comment on that?
No.
So we're working closely with the Public Facilities Department to, again, they're so old that they cannot be repaired and they need to be replaced, but they will be replaced with an elevator. It's going to be a longer-term situation as well, but we do have wayfinding signage trying to reroute people who need access through those escalators.
Can I just add something? For MGH, we have a lot of patients that use the subway system to come to MGH. So I like to propose that we look at shuttles, accessible shuttles, whether it's through MGH or through the city. So if we can do that, that would be great, because majority of our patients, other than using the ride, are using the T.
Thank you, Zari. We'll definitely keep in touch with Laura and see what we can figure out. Thank you, Giuseppe, for your question. I know that the mayor has a very busy schedule, so I want to ask, does anybody have a final question for Mayor Wu? Or comment? Anyone on Zoom?
I see one on Zoom.
Yep. I'm going to ask Kevin Heaton to unmute and ask your question. Oh, wait, that was me. Hold on, Kevin. Okay, let's try this again. Go, Kevin.
Okay, this is actually for Laura. I was just going to ask about if how you could improve stop announcements on the T. The buses don't always make them. They'll say that the GPS breaks down, and the drivers don't want to do it.
Laura, I can unmute you if you want to briefly answer that.
Sure. So Kevin, with respect to stop announcements specifically on our buses, although this applies to all of our modes of transportation at the T, this is something we monitor very, very closely. For those that don't know, my team within the MBTA, we oversee what we call our internal accessibility monitoring program. which is a very, very cool, very extensive secret shopper program for riders with disabilities. So at any given moment, we have teams out there providing us real-time data about how our bus service, our subway service, commuter rail service is going from the perspective of riders with disabilities. What we have been seeing on our buses with respect to stop announcements is that about 97 to 98% of the time, the automated announcements, both the visual and audio announcements, are working properly. On our subway lines, there's a big difference between the branches. Some perform absolutely very, very well. Our blue line subway cars are reported to make announcements 100% of the time. Our new orange line cars we're thrilled to report, are right there. We have some systemic issues on our red line that we are actively working on. But what I would say, if you are on a bus or on a subway vehicle and you notice something is not working properly, the best thing you can do is let us know about that. And there are a couple of ways to do that. But what we're able to do is if you can provide the vehicle number or at least the location and exact time of your riding on that vehicle, we can get that information immediately over to our vehicle maintenance teams, and they will inspect the vehicle and at the end of that night, at the end of the trip, to determine if there's an issue there. That's something we do on a regular basis. So again, although our data on bus compliance is very good, it certainly does not mean that you are always that you're never gonna run into an issue. So I would just ask that if and when you do, to please let us know. And you can do that, Kevin, by either filing a comment form on our website, which is mbta.com, and go to a tab at the top that says Contact Us. You'll have an opportunity right there to identify the comment as accessibility related. Or you can always call us at 617-222-3200. That's 711 for relay, and speak with a call agent about what you experienced.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Kevin, for that question. So I realize that one of our board members has a final comment for Mayor Wu. Elizabeth?
Yes. Again, Mayor, thank you so much for coming today.
Could you hold your mic a little closer, Elizabeth?
Yes, I'm Elizabeth Dienklauer, and some of us had an opportunity to attend your inaugural event out on City Hall Plaza last year, which it was not quite fully done with construction, but certainly gave people, it was a very welcoming, inclusive event, and we know subsequently that it then officially opened. And one of the Commissioner Mccosh and the Commission on Disability were involved in making that accessible. What our advisory board has wanted is at the 1-year mark from its official opening to have a post-evaluation 1-year opportunity for an evaluation for people who have disabilities of various kinds, to be able to give feedback on how it's working, what's working well, if there's any further improvements or adjustments that need to be made. So we welcome that opportunity to do so, but it's certainly already, there has been a place now where people can, both for official business and for social events, participate very differently.
Thank you. That sounds great. I would, I'm going to think back to when it was sometime in the fall. So, November, okay. Thank you, Jerry. So that would be great to work together on, and thank you so much for being part of that and helping us to make sure that we're not just moving on once a ribbon is cut, but really continuing to try to make improvements. So thank you so much, everyone, for having me. I want to say a special thank you to Laura. I'm going to just try to go to whatever meeting Laura is at in the future. She has such expertise, and I appreciate her sharing that and sharing the hot seat with me a bit. As we know, the MBTA is such an important partner for us. I've had the joy of already just casually running into the new general manager. General Manager Eng has been out and about at community events, and I've seen him in the audience here and there. So it's exciting to see leadership there that's really committed to being on the ground and seeing the issues firsthand, and retaining the incredible leaders and expertise that are there, like Laura. So thank you to everyone for all that you do, and thank you especially to the commissioners and Commissioner Mccosh and her team for making sure that Boston can continue to strive for what is even more accessible, even more inclusive for everyone.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and I'm thrilled that you had a chance to listen. Great. I have to say that Mayor Wu is always available to listen to our concerns, so we really appreciate her leadership, and I'm thrilled that she was able to listen to some of the issues in the community as we see them. Are there any more questions in the Zoom or in the...
I'm not seeing any in the room, but come grab me. Oh, I do see one in the room, so we'll go to one in the room before we go back to Zoom.
Hi, I'm Deputy Chief Jim Ho at Boston Fire. This isn't so much a question, but it's an opportunity to share some information, so I think I'll take it. I'm at the Boston Fire Alarm Office, and an underutilized tool is the fire alarm boxes. So anybody that has a language issue or any kind of a communication issue, if they pull that fire alarm box, that still works. The red boxes, there's 1,600 of them throughout the streets. They're in hospitals and hotels. And with very few exceptions, you're going to get 8 firefighters, 2 pieces of apparatus, medical equipment, tools, radios on scene within 3 minutes. So you may get hung up in a 911 call or a queue, or you may have a language disability, language issue, and this is an excellent way to get help quickly. So it's just pull the firebox and you'll get it. And if you permit me, I'm going to make a comment that occurred to me while I was here. Years ago, I drove a beer truck in around the city of Boston, and pre-ADA. And so we had to take the barrels of beer and lug them up the curbs on a 2-wheeler. And we rejoiced when the curb cuts came, right? So that just underscores something that you don't realize what the ancillary benefit of something could be. It could be something much down the road. So the progress that you make today can impact other people that may not be your target group. And so I applaud you for that, and I think it's a good idea that we continue these type of things. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for both of those comments. I didn't know that myself. I never think to notice that the fireboxes are there, and it's good to know that they do still work because they seem kind of old for some reason.
160 years.
160 years, wow, okay. A credit to maintenance, as the mayor mentioned. Not only do we install things, but we maintain them. So that's excellent. And then also your comment about the curb ramps being, have more uses than just for people in wheelchairs. We know people with strollers. The mayor has 2 children. People who are carrying rolling suitcases along. We always say that we strive for access for heels and wheels. Because we know that people trip on brick. You know, it's not a great service for anybody. So thank you so much for those comments. Okay, we have about 10 minutes left. Are there any other comments or
We
questions?
do have one hand in the Zoom room, so Colleen, if you're able to pin and invite Mia to unmute.
Yes, Mia, I'm going to ask you to unmute. I also did see you wrote your question in the chat, but if you could briefly ask it.
Yes, hi. My comment is for Mayor Wu and everyone in the room. I just wanted to address a situation that I recently became aware of. I am an advocate here in Massachusetts. I'm outside Boston, but I advocate in general for everyone with disabilities. I wanted to know if Mayor Wu or other individuals who are affiliated with Mass Health and Hospitals Association are aware of how their new policy directive is impacting specifically individuals with disabilities. There was an update recently to the code of conduct for anyone who is a patient or with patients receiving care at mass hospitals and healthcare facilities. It's come to my attention that the policy has been used in certain ways to discriminate against or deny care to people with disabilities, especially including individuals with mental health issues. And I had done a survey myself of security details that are contracted with the hospitals and noticed that each security team had concerns and issues about this as well. And I personally observed an incident where there was a hospital safety issue going on and the security staff were not able to respond due to staff abusing the ability to call security for things that were not of a pressing or emergency nature.
Thank you, Mia, for bringing this up. I had not heard about this, and it would be great if we could follow up with you just to get some more information on which code or policy, which entity was in charge of that, if that was a city situation or kind of a collective that the association agreed on, so that we can get into the details of that. Thank you for raising it.
Absolutely. I'll send over my email information and reach out to your office.
Mayor, I believe that each hospital has a code of conduct, patient code of conduct. And so, for example, at MGH, we've done a lot of training with our security staff. And I've also included some language around mental health and how to interact with patients when they're going through certain episodes. So I think that perhaps that's what she's referring to. And that would be something that perhaps MHA would have access to for all the hospitals, but it's definitely an important point.
I want to note that Zari works at Mass General. Zari, what's your title?
I'm the Disability Program Manager.
Great. So we have a lot of expertise on our board, as you can see. And I will also mention that the mayor has a wonderful public health commission. The Boston Public Health Commission has experts in every area, from behavioral health to mental health to health policy and health care. So we work very closely with the Boston Public Health Commission, and we can raise this issue with them as well.
Sounds like Zari scheduled herself for a few meetings today. Great. Any other questions in the room? Might be the first community forum that didn't go long. We're here if you want to speak with us. Commissioner, anything else you want to add?
Just really briefly, I will give some highlights from our annual report. As part of our ordinance, we are charged with producing an annual report every year. It's on the table for anyone in person. We dropped the link in the chat, which we can do again for people to read. But some highlights that I will mention. The first thing that we worked very closely with last year was outdoor dining. The city moved from a temporary policy under COVID to a permanent policy, which was a huge change. So we wanted to make sure that all the layouts were accessible and inclusive for people with disabilities, because once they're approved, that's it. They're going to be approved forever. So our architectural access staff actually created 4 schemes to make it easier for small restaurants. So these schemes had 4 different layouts. If you were a small restaurant and you had 1 parking space, it was a certain layout you could use. If you had 2 parking spaces, it was a different setup you could use. And this took the burden off small restaurants to actually have to hire an architect and pay the money to develop an individual scheme. So it was super helpful and very helped with systemic access. So bravo to my architectural access staff, because we review hundreds of, Sarah reviewed 500 applications one year. So it was a ton of work, but we're moving forward with the outdoor dining program. Accessibility upgrades in City Hall. We mentioned the City Hall Plaza, Elizabeth mentioned. We do have the follow-up meeting scheduled for November, so we'll look forward to that. And I mentioned the new lift going in on the mezzanine, excited about that. Communication access, I want to give a shout out to our Office of Language and Communication Access. We work very closely with them. And new city policy is to translate all of our vital documents into the top 10 languages spoken in the city. We also are required to, for any neighborhood meetings, we are required to look at the languages spoken in that neighborhood and ensure that we have translation for the top 3 languages that are spoken in those neighborhoods. So a lot of work done on that. I know Lynn is here. She spoke earlier. She works on the deaf tax days. And this year we piloted a visually impaired tax day. So that's free tax preparation for anyone who's deaf or visually impaired with specific services for those needs covered. So that's a great program that the city runs that's been in place for over 10 years, the Deaf Tax Days. And it's really become a national model because it's such an inclusive program. And Lynn, how did the visual impairment tax days go this year?
It went really well from the perspective that we have the 3 Mass Commission for the Blind folks on our board assisting, the subcommittee assisting, and officially there were a potential for 5 to 6 people this year for the blind who would respond and be active because of the accessibility, the viewpoint, the things, but there were 14, and the view of the board, the Commission for the Blind, we apparently have been talked about in different ways at different events. So that's been exciting, and we're looking forward to turning it from the pilot program to the actual program. I'm in the process right now of survey and getting things out so that we can officially get it into the
Great, thank you, Lynn. And again, it's another example of systemic access that we can help push for residents to get the services they need without barriers. And I know Colleen serves on the committee for access for taxes, and she also works with language access. So Colleen has been on monitoring the Zoom. She's our outreach and engagement specialist, and she does a great job. The last few things I'll mention, under programs and services, we work really closely with the elections department. A few years ago, we implemented an accessible vote by mail program so that accessible voting by mail electronically. So if you have a visual disability or a print disability, we call it someone who doesn't have dexterity to fill out an application by hand, they can do it now online and email it in. So it's also an innovative program that Boston implemented, and we're working closely with the Elections Commission on that, as well as to ensure that all the polling places in person are accessible. Kylie is also here. Kylie Potter is our staff person who runs the accessible parking program. The parking program installs spaces for residents throughout the city, residents with disabilities, and also in the commercial areas of Boston. So that's a very important program that we run in collaboration with the Boston Transportation Department. And what else will I mention? I'll wrap up with our annual events. Last year, we hosted our community forum, as the mayor mentioned. I can't believe it's been a year, and that the mayor was newly elected and was able to come, and we're thrilled that she was here today. Our next celebration will be ADA Day. It's going to be on Tuesday, July 18th, on the newly renovated City Hall Plaza. So we welcome you all to attend. We'll have information tables from our collaborating agencies. We'll have music, food, we have great T-shirts, and we'll be launching a great initiative that the mayor alluded to, the Boston Breaks Initiative. We'll be celebrating them. And then finally, our Civic Engagement Day is every fall. We welcome people with disabilities into City Hall to see all the access. Mayor Wu was City Council President when she championed the renovation of the City Council chamber. And we'll also have people there to meet their neighborhood liaisons, meet City Council staff, register to vote, learn how to testify at a hearing. It's a great way to break down barriers to invite people with disabilities to get engaged in local government. So we'll announce that date soon. And I think that's all I have to say. So any final comments, Andrea?
This is Andrea, thanks, Commissioner. My only final comment is to thank the board always for their advocacy. Wes mentioned the new captions ordinance. If you are in a restaurant or bar in Boston and they don't have their captions turned on, we have directions on our website. You can let us know and we can educate them about the new requirements. So that's the biggest thing that I'll let everyone in the room know. But that is all that we have today.
And we also are getting cards printed up, wallet-sized cards with instructions. That should be coming soon.
Excellent.
So thank you, everybody, for attending, and we hope to see you at ADA Day. Thank you to everyone on Zoom as well.